Action.
Hi, I'm Emily Ross, LPC, and I am here with my friend Min.
I'm Minh
Bins, and we are going to learn more about Buddhism and how Buddhists view sadness and depression and ways of healing through their ways of thinking. And we're glad you're here.
It's a pleasure.
20 years, and one of the things that I've noticed is that when people heal their mind and their body, but don't address their spirit, they still end up sick or distressed. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about and make sure to cover is how different cultures and different religions view different mental health disorders and how they suggest healing from it. So I hope you'd start with a little bit about have you always been Buddhist? How did you come to that?
I'm a bit of a Heinz 57 when it comes to religions. I was always the boy that never missed Sunday school or Bible study or anything like that. I took the Shahada 2 years ago, I want to say.
What's that?
That's your oath to become a Muslim.
Oh my!
No, yeah.
You've explored quite a bit.
I have. Which I just fell in love with because I love this phrase they use about the Arabic people, that they're the people that sing to their gods. And so whenever you hear the chanting of the Quran, anytime that I've ever went into a mosque and made wudu and then went to pray, you feel lighter, like you're on a mountaintop. And that's something that couldn't be explained or anything, so I felt the spiritual connection there. And then I've been a student for Buddhism. I've been a student of Buddhism, rather. Since around that time, I looked at it more of a philosophy as a religion, but after a while, I just felt like that was the way to live. So I did my 5 precepts, and I swore oath of fealty to the Triple Gem, and that's been it ever since. That was in the tail end of July this year, which I actually bought my let's see, my ordination papers somewhere. Yeah, from the Adida Meditation Temple out of Houston, Texas.
Wow. So can you tell me, when you go through that process, you said the 5 precepts. What are those?
The 5 precepts is, and whenever you are meditating through the process, the ritual, and you're swearing the oath, you're given the option to not swear any of the 5 precepts, and it doesn't make you less of a Buddhist. It just it shows you where you want to be in life. And the first and foremost is you don't kill any living being. And one of the beautiful ideas behind that is that we're all in this together. We're all on the planet Earth, so we have to tolerate each other. And if you can tolerate flies that bite you without swatting at them, or spiders, or wasps, or any creeping, crawling thing, then you can abide your fellow man. And I thought that was very beautiful.
I like that.
And then, of course, there's no sexual misconduct. It's actually a sort of a misconception about Buddhism that you can't be married, or you can't have a family or anything like that. That is for venerables, which the abbot of this temple, he's a venerable.
Okay.
But for a regular monk, as long as it is a monogamous relationship, then there's nothing wrong with that. It's not frowned upon, and it's a good way to spread your religion too. So,
right.
Teach your kids about peace. And let's see. Then there's no stealing or lying, and don't become intoxicated, which is whenever you're training to become a monk. You're only allowed 1 cup of coffee in the morning.
Okay.
Just because you don't want anything that will cloud your mind, basically, or take your mind off of what's happening in any given moment.
Okay. So a lot of mindfulness.
Absolutely. That's what I love is there's mindfulness and then there's mindfulness. And mindfulness is you're worried about tomorrow. You got bills to pay. You're late for something. And then there's mindfulness, which is you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. You're confident in it. You know that no matter what comes, you can adapt and be resilient. And I love that. Because if you will get there through meditation and chanting and everything, you get to that place of resilience.
Is mindfulness sort of an understanding of what you're to be doing?
Absolutely. It's an understanding of whatever you're doing at any given moment and your reasoning why.
Right.
That actually leads into a form of therapy that I was introduced to through researching this. It was Dharma therapy. And what it does is you basically, the crux of it is to always understand why you're feeling what you're feeling. And that goes back into we were talking a moment ago about the skandhas, your aggregates. It's how a person discerns the world around them. Because if you go down and you think, is it affecting my physical body, or is it affecting my my spirit or my happiness?
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly but surely, through meditation and thinking about why you feel the way that you do, you can unravel that.
And that's how you release it, by
Absolutely.
becoming aware and becoming mindful.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's a Dharma? Just so people understand.
Well, there's personal Dharma, and then there's Dharma as it relates to the Triple Gem. And whenever we say the Dharma of the Triple Gem, that's the Buddhist teaching. And then there's also your personal Dharma, which is your truth and your honor. That's how I take to interpret it. And now there's some extremists that believe that if your Dharma is strong and perfect, that you don't need to eat. You can fast indefinitely, and you're immune to snake bites.
Have you tried that?
I have not tried that yet, but if I ever get there.
I feel hungry just thinking about that. My Dharma is not perfect, just so you know.
Yes, that's and that's one of the things that's undeniable. It was taught to me by the abbot Sufo of the Buman temple, or not the Buman, Adidak rather. Sorry, is that whenever you increase your merit, which is doing good deeds, it's because you have investments, financial investments, and then you have your spiritual investments, and it's kind of akin to the Christian idea that if you get rewarded for something on earth, it's not something you're rewarded for in heaven.
Right.
Well, the idea of merit is if you be charitable, help people, and that grows success with financial things. Just because you become a pillar of your community, and you can't help it. Is the Buddhist lesson.
It's like when you behave well and when you're kind to other humans, that comes back.
Absolutely.
Just naturally.
That it always comes back around, and the impetus to behave that way is your Dharma. So your inner wisdom and your compassion. That's another aspect of Dharma therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if in Buddhist culture, if you do anything with inner wisdom and compassion, then you can't help but not be depressed, or at least that's the idea anyway.
Mm-hmm. So church structure-wise, like I was surprised when I visited the temple. Like it looks like a church to me. There's pews, and there was a program they let me have that I cannot read because it's in a language I don't understand, which makes me feel terrible. I wish that was a gift I had.
Vietnamese is very hard.
It is very hard. But you mentioned abbots and monks. So when you come, do they call that church? Do you come to church on a particular day?
We always refer to it in English as service.
Okay.
Because you're going to do your chance to increase your own Dharma, to pay homage to the Triple Gem, be mindful, remind yourself of the right path, the middle path in life. That was one of the things that was novel about the Buddha, is there was the left-hand path, the right-hand path, but you have to be perfectly measured in all things in life.
So you want to be in the middle, not even on the left or the right.
Absolutely, that's the best way to, by my estimation, and the Buddha's, to decrease suffering in this world.
Okay.
Including personal suffering.
So, do they have a concept in Buddhism for depression?
Well, that's the thing. Is I honestly don't believe that they do. They have in Pali there's this term kalissa, which is mental uneasiness, and you could almost through Western eyes consider depression to be like a mental uneasiness or mental disease or defect, but in Buddhism, it's looked at as a symptom of not living with inner wisdom and compassion. And compassion also is reflected upon yourself.
So it might be that person's not being compassionate with themselves, not forgiving themselves,
Absolutely.
and that's just settling them or making the unease. Mm-hmm. And so healing that would involve...
Well, it would involve just learning yourself more. Because if you have mentally uneasiness, you're gonna be isolated, you're gonna be resentful, you're gonna be hateful. But learning why you do the things you do makes it easier to accept that you're not some unforgivable villain. Everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes in different ways. But as long as we can make personal recompense and have knowledge of that personal recompense, we can move forward. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's the beautiful thing about any religion throughout the world that's worth its salt is what you might call it, supplication, a supplicant heart, mm-hmm. and also gratitude.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about 3, what did you call them?
The Triple Gem?
What's that?
The triple gem. Triple gem.
Gem.
Yes,
like
ma'am.
Gem.
Like a jewel. Yes.
Okay.
And that is the bedrock of Buddhism to be able to fix yourself, which you can rely on. Even in the Heart Sutra, we take refuge in the triple gem,
Okay.
which is the Buddha himself, Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, and the Sangha, which is the Buddhist community at large.
Okay. So it talks about like a higher power, the self, and community.
Absolutely.
I love that because one of the things that I really stress with healing is connection to other humans and community, because I feel like in the absence of community we really suffer.
Absolutely.
On some level.
It goes back to the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. And one of the way that temples and Buddhist temples in particular got started was it was always a day's walk between one village and the next, and they had deer parks, they called them. They'd feed deer, and all the monks and holy men would meet with each other. Mm-hmm. That's where the gold robes come from, because you wanted to be able to distinguish yourself from some madman asking for alms, where you were trained somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's where the temples came from, because they would meet at a certain place for travelers. They would do good deeds. That's your merits, because nobody really wants to abide monks unless they're a service to the Sangha, to the Buddhist community, you know? Because most monks, if you don't have a job and you're living in the temple, you live off of alms. And so temples will die if they don't do good works for their community.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. That's an interesting concept. So, if you were experiencing depression, how would you go to that community? Like, how would that work? Would you come and say, I'm experiencing unease?
It's the same way that I ended up dealing with my anger problem. I went to the Adida Meditation Temple in Houston, and I told them that I needed a sabbatical. I needed to step away. That I needed to do this for me, to learn how to process all these things inside me, and that there was no other path that I could see to do so. And just by living there,
you lived there?
Yes, ma'am. I did live there for a month and a half. I called it my Buddhist boot camp.
I mean, yeah.
Whenever I actually took the precepts and I swore my allegiance to Buddha and everything, it was a 3-hour and 45-minute process in an un-air-conditioned August temple.
Oh my!
My Bodhi pillow was soaked to the floor whenever we were done, and then I was baptized with the spritzing of water off of a daisy, and that only happens whenever you are officially ordained Buddhist laity and the day that you pass. Okay. So that's what I did. Is I devoted myself, at least for a short period, to the Buddha and the temple and the Sangha, and that's I feel like it's been the most monumental force for good in my life that I've ever experienced.
Did it help with the anger problem?
Absolutely.
How do you think?
Well,
can I ask that? I mean, you can tell me no.
No,
I ask intrusive questions.
I'm an open book, I promise you. Well, the first thing that was the keystone of me discovering the root of my anger problems was the fact that I was a petty man, and I never looked at myself in that way. This was my first long meditation, what do you call it, session, if you want to call it that. And yeah, I was like, that was the root cause of most of my problems in life. Was that
what do you mean when you say that you were petty? Like you held on to resentment, or
yes, to resentment, competition. Like I called it my petty hatreds now, because I would just look for a reason to be sore at somebody, and if you juxtapose that or you combine that rather with a prideful and egotistical nature, that is a time bomb. You're sitting on a powder keg, and I would have never come to that conclusion without learning about the bedrock of Buddhism, you know, and experiencing the sutras and the meditation process myself.
Can you tell me what the sutras are?
The sutras are they're basically stories that each one of them tells about a different aspect of the Buddhist Dharma. And one of my favorites is the Diamond Sutra, that it speaks on self-reliance. Okay. There's one of the real differences between your Abrahamic religions and Buddhism is in most Abrahamic religions, there's this idea of a Messiah figure, or somebody that's going to come save you.
Sure.
And I believe that, like, sometimes, if taken to an extreme, that can be a breeding ground for mental illness. Because you start thinking, why am I not worthy that something didn't come save me? But in Buddhism, it's suffering is universal. And like one of my favorite lines from the Bible, it rains on the wicked and righteous likewise. So bad things are going to happen. and only by decreasing suffering, being mindful, can you abate that. It's up to you, and I mean that's transformative. That idea, I believe.
Sounds like there's a lot of humility. Like it's
Oh yeah.
it's a lot of like humbling yourself and kind of. Does that sound?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I was taught was whenever you become a monk, which I'm not, I'm a laity, but whenever you become a monk, you have to think of yourself as beneath the average person. You're a servant. You're not royalty. You know, it's one of my biggest beefs, or it never set well with me. The idea of a pastor being on the podium when people pray to them, and like I feel like that feeds the ego, and that's no matter where you come from, that's a bad thing.
So in Buddhism, there's not like somebody who, because you said there's services. So there's not one person or one monk or one figure like the abbot or somebody who teaches.
Absolutely, even known to the Buddha himself. Like there were the Sakyamuni Buddha was the first Buddha, but then there's also
is that like a prophet or?
Oh, well, he was the first person to reach enlightenment, or the state of nirvana, to break himself away from samsara, which is this world of reincarnation that we all go through. The way it was explained to me is it's like going through junior high for forever. It's just over and over again. Your first
lives are like that.
Yes,
okay.
you pass on, and then you start over, and you're in junior high.
Then you try again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the Buddha, he realized that if you can decrease suffering, you can reach enlightenment, and a lot of that has to do with acceptance of the way things truly are. Because even it goes into the stages of grief. You know, if you don't have acceptance, you're in battle for something. You know.
So talk louder.
Huh?
I can't hear you.
I got a friend who always says about suffering. Because we're all going to suffer, but it's up to us for how long.
Absolutely.
So, another question I wanted to ask you about was, and I don't know if I pronounce it right, Bodhisattva?
Oh, Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva? What is that?
That is, like how we were talking about that there's Sakyamuni Buddha, but there's been many Buddhas. And the collection of all people who've reached nirvana are called the Bodhisattva. They've broken themselves away from reincarnation because they ascended to a state that we know of in English as enlightenment. So whenever you pay homage to the Bodhisattva, you're paying homage to anyone that came before you that figured it out, basically.
Oh, okay.
So you could be a member of the Sangha, but you're not a member of the Bodhisattva. Because you're practicing and you have good practice, but you haven't reached nirvana yet. But once you reach nirvana, you are part of the Sangha, but you're also now part of the Bodhisattva.
I had looked that up once, and for some reason, this definition stuck in my mind. A person who gives up or forgoes personal enlightenment for the benefit of others.
Absolutely, that's one of the ways that I've seen that's similar to all the people who have ever assumed Buddha nature. It's self-sacrifice. That's the name of the game. If you want to serve the temple, that's what you have to do.
So there's a belief in reincarnation and learning lessons, and that suffering is part of that. And there's a mindfulness that comes about that's not personal, and there's not like a Messiah who's going to come and save you. And that if you lean into that and work on your Dharma,
yes, your truth and always now.
Then that would heal the sadness or the depression.
It's like the symptom of having strong Dharma versus weak Dharma. If you have strong Dharma, people look up to you. Your word is you have integrity. That your yes means yes, and your no means no. Weak Dharma, you change like the wind. You know, so you don't keep appointments. You don't feel like getting out of bed that day, so you don't. You don't have self-discipline, and that's just it's a breeding ground for depression. So I feel like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you go to become mindful before you're depressed, that's always going to be the best way out of it.
Sure.
But there's always...
Or to avoid it completely.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I feel like they don't have a concept for depression in Pali. Because if you follow the tenets of Buddhism and your precepts, then it mitigates that to some degree.
Well, we should say that on camera is so I came to the temple and I was able to speak with a Buddhist nun at length, and there was a language barrier because I don't know any other languages, and so I was asking her about depression, which she didn't understand, and so I said sadness, and she brought us to where they pay homage to their dead ancestors, and that was like the closest thing that it seemed like she could equate with sadness, and so that was one of my first questions.
I call it becoming unshakable. Is things that would have shook me to my core before I went to the temple. It just doesn't bother me. But one of the ways you're actually even selected for entrance to the temple to become ordained is how the abbot judges your energy. They're a firm believer with the things about if a baby and an animal like you, then you can't be too bad of a person. Well, that's a codified thing in Buddhism. If you feel an uneasiness around a certain person, then that's not. It's not that they're bad. It's just not somebody that you would want in the holy places. To devote themselves to Lord Buddha.
So there's so many things about this way of thinking that really resonate with me, because I go a lot off of energy and we're learning it in science now that people really do give off a frequency, and that bad moods are really contagious. So it's interesting. They've known this for such a long time, and we should maybe listen to some of this because they seem to know what they're talking about. There was this story of, it's actually on YouTube. I don't suggest watching it, but a Buddhist monk did a demonstration where he went into the city and lit himself on fire and just sat there the whole time.
Oh yes.
And it was so I couldn't watch for very long, if I'm honest with you, because that was harrowing. But he self-sacrificed. He really martyred himself because of what was happening to the people there. And the idea that he could be so mindful that the pain didn't, even when the pain got probably pretty intolerable for most humans, just calm. And he looked literally peaceful the entire time.
I'm not to cut you off.
No.
There's a principle in Buddhism, going back to being immune to snake bites and not having to break your fast, that comes along with a monk, or venerable rather, knowing precisely the moment of their death, to the point where they have a ritual for it, and then they lay down and they pass. And it is one of the wildest things I've ever seen. Like I've seen it? Not in person. I've seen footage in Vietnamese and had it explained to me.
Right.
And I mean, it's certainly there's many ways to falsify things to camera. But
hey, how are you? That kitty loves you.
Well, cats and babies love me.
Well,
Period.
right.
They do.
I'm hit or miss, so I don't know. My energy must fluctuate a lot. Don't anybody comment about that. Thank you.
They say that everybody has the Buddha nature. So.
Yeah. So if somebody was interested in learning more, because there's a lot, like there's so many, and I know I'm going to get in the car and be like, oh, I should have asked this and that, because there's so many different concepts. Is there a place to learn more slowly?
Ooh, well, there's certain online correspondence courses, and before now, that's really been the closest thing that I found to a Westerner to be able to really sink your teeth into Buddhism. But my master, Bhante Rafa, he wants to start it is started, we just want to take off, the Invictus Buddhism Project. And it's named after the William Ernest Henley poem, Invictus. Because going back to the immolation, the monk that immolated himself, I've never winced nor cried aloud. That's one of the lines from the poem, and I believe it's the most Buddhist thing I believe I've ever read written from a Westerner.
Right.
And also I've been taught the history of how the Jesuit order was affected by Buddhist teaching, and how Buddhism was picked up by Pyro the Elder, and is a servant or a counselor of Alexander the Great, and from him it passes down to Marcus Aurelius, and Stoicism, and there's one other. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind at the moment, but it's fascinating to find how they went to the Hindu Kush region and then brought back the teachings of the Buddha, and how Stoicism and Christianity they were changed forever. It's just the idea of you keep things on the inside and you don't show too much emotion, but not because you're unfeeling, quite the opposite. You've been able to manage it. One of the things that is talked about a lot in Buddhism is you get rid of suffering by learning how to suffer. Because if you try to run from suffering, you'll be running the rest of your life, and you'll suffer because of it.
Sure.
But
So acceptance is a key also.
absolutely.
So it's an important thing to differentiate. The teachings aren't to stuff your emotions or to say that you're not feeling or that you're not suffering. It's to really become mindful that suffering is part of what we're learning, how we're learning here, and to accept that and be okay with that. Come to terms with that. Forgive yourself. Forgiveness was a thing.
Absolutely.
So it's really important. I want to make sure that people differentiate between the two, because mindfulness is not, I feel sad, I'm going to stop it. Mindfulness is, I feel sad, that's a feeling I have, and it's not me. It's not who I am. It's an emotional experience.
Absolutely. There's the imagery of the flower blossom passing in the stream. Is that you recognize it, you respect it, you acknowledge it, but you have to know that it's just passing. Every phenomena that is outside the human being is a impermanent thing, and that's the bedrock of stopping your own suffering. Is that there's nothing outside of yourself. You're only ever going to be as you already are, as great as you ever will be.
That's something I say a lot in therapy, is that suffering, a lot of the times when clients come in, is from bucking up against the emotion, and that if you lean in and just let the emotion wash through you, there's really nothing very scary about sensations in your body, and that's all feelings really are. So I feel like I like a lot of the things that Buddhism offers in terms of healing. I think it's a great way to deal with spirit.
It really is. Just you wouldn't think that sitting in the full lotus position, just breathing, doing a breathing exercise, minding your pulse, doing the Hikari mudra, which is whenever you take your tongue and you put it in the cleft of your palate, there's a little divot there, and it's just to make your energy flow throughout your body.
So we talk, there's energy, and there's
Absolutely,
and there's following your intuition, and there's service to others. Like, there's so many great things about it. I can't think of something that I don't like about it.
that's what
Maybe fasting.
Oh, that is the thing. Is whenever you move past laity to monkhood, you have one meal in the morning and before noon, and that is it.
But they don't mind.
You get to the point where you don't mind. It's like the absence of air conditioning. At the temple, you turn the air conditioning on low whenever you sleep. The rest of the time, it's you don't have it, and you think I thought that it's insurmountable. But once you start living that way and you accept this is the way it is, your body will acclimate to it. And another thing I want to touch on is the fact that when you're training to meditate, one of the things that they thoroughly advise against is don't mistake a trance-like state for mindfulness meditation.
What would be the difference?
Well,
how would I know?
It's like repression versus what do you call it? Moving through.
Okay.
It's from the, I believe it's Frank Herbert's novel, the Dune, The Fear of Energy. I couldn't quote it off the top of my head. But
that's okay. You sound way more educated than me. So don't make me look too foolish.
You let fear pass through you, and then you turn your eyes inwardly. And when you look inwardly towards the path of the fear took, only you will remain. And that's letting the fear, fear pass through you, rather, as opposed to suppressing fear, because that can make you hasty and impatient. If you're so terrified, it's like the loudest person in the room is the weakest person in the room.
Yeah, I say that.
So they're suppressing that fear. But somebody who's calm and cool and collected, that you're letting the fear pass through you, or the anger, or any
or the sadness. Emotion. I feel like that would be any emotion. You just, if you let it pass through you, you can watch the path it took, and you don't have to do that path.
Absolutely, because you have to recognize that your emotions and your concepts, any phenomena that is outside of you is not you. Even onto your consciousness. Your consciousness is not you.
And it can be transitory. Like that anger, that fear, it can just pass through you. It's when we buck up against it that it roots up because it wants to be acknowledged. All you have to do is acknowledge it. And I know that sounds super simplistic, and it's not easy to do, but it's really that simple.
That's it. You said it. I believe that life is simple, but never is it easy.
Right.
Because if goodness were easy or honor profitable, everyone would be good and honorable.
That's true. That's true. So, do you have any get out of reincarnation quick tips for me so I don't have to do this again? Like,
Well,
I'm
this is
kidding. I
something-
love earth instruments and I want to be reincarnated in other times. Everybody knows that. But if I was ready to tap out, how would I?
Well, there's something my grandpa used to say, and that's if you want your life to be easy, or if you try to take the easy path, it'll always be hard. But if you always try to take that hard path, your life will be easy.
Oh.
And I believe that it's the same along the same vein as I used to say, going cheap is always more expensive.
Yeah, right.
You know, because you think you're getting a shortcut, but you're buying 5 pairs of $10 boots
Right.
a year when you could buy a $50 pair of boots and it would last you 10 years.
Right.
So,
That sounds very wise.
it would.
What other questions did I not think to ask that you feel like I should have?
I can't speak to what questions you should have asked, but one of the things I did want to touch on is the profound strides that the American government has been making with prescribing meditation for combat veterans. It's wild. It's studies have shown that your medial prefrontal cortex and your, I believe it's the amygdala. One of them is controls fight or flight, and the other one is yes, and then the other one is the seat of reasoning. Yes,
That's here.
And some sort of way there's a connection between the two that exacerbates depression and things like that, if I'm not mistaken.
What happens in trauma is that, so everything gets filtered through your amygdala. So right now you're hearing the sounds, feeling the cool, hearing my voice, and your amygdala is passing it to your frontal cortex so that you can respond to me. The minute, so if I jumped up and came at you with a knife, your amygdala would stop communication with your frontal cortex, throw you into fight or flight, drown you with, well, not drown you, that's dramatic, but you'd get testosterone, adrenaline, and cortisol, and be able to fight off the threat. And so what happens in repeated trauma is the communication is disconnected so frequently that it just stays. They're like BFFs in a standoff. So you can't really reason. Your amygdala takes over. And so reconnecting the two has been a scientific conundrum for quite some time. Like, how do you connect the two after a lot?
And that's where they've been having progress. Is,
with mindfulness.
Mindfulness, meditation. There was a story about this police veteran who he said he would have to feign being human, being a casual human, whenever he would go pick out cereal at the grocery store. And he said the way that other people, they just browse, they look, they say, hey, I like that. He was going in it like it was a military exercise because he had spent so many tours over in Afghanistan. And one of the things that helped him was meditation. It bridges that gap.
It gets them to talk to each other.
Absolutely. And another thing is, once again, not a therapist.
You know a lot.
I try. Is the fact that meditation has been shown to grow your hippocampus, which I believe is underdeveloped, is begins shrinking through prolonged chronic depression.
It does, yeah. That is true. It does. Depression, anxiety, all of these disordered ways of being, they all do over time change your body. That's why I talk about the mind, body, and spirit interconnectedness, because your mind, the depression, will make physical changes to your body over time, and that's why it's so important to learn how to release it and let it wash through you. And I've said this in the first few videos. Whichever one you're most comfortable, mind, body, or spirit, whichever one you feel like you can address first, just start addressing it. Because once you do one, another will become more. It'll seem more attainable. And so as long as you're trying to do some part of it, it's working towards better Dharma, I think is how you would say it.
And I firmly believe that. It's the same thing with if you want to go into scholastics or physical fitness, is once you get that ball rolling, it changes your mindset.
Right. So, mindset is so important.
Absolutely.
It really is. And I feel like Buddhism, more than some other different ways of thinking, really focuses on mindset and getting your mind right so that your spirit is right. Absolutely. And your body follows, right? So I've really loved this. I'm sure everybody's going to have a trillion questions. Please put them in the comments. We'll try to get them answered for you. I loved this.